RunChatLive Ep.21, and we made it. We're here, and I'm smiling. This, for those who've been following, is an episode which I was hoping to bring you a while back, but there was a over-the-pond kind of breakdown in communication. But this is probably the reason why I made these 1:30 in the afternoon instead of our original Sunday 9 o'clock, because I know there's loads of people outside of the UK as well who I really want you to listen to and get some inspiration from. So yes, without putting too much stress on our shoulders, this is the reason why I changed the whole of my podcast time and broke the #1 rule of consistency, because this is the person I really wanted you to listen to. God, that's good. I think I got my own revenge now on her making me stressed out. So anyway, so here we are. I'll just introduce her briefly. Tina Muir, I've known for quite a while now, because we used to be connected when we worked for Runners Connect, who I wrote for, and Tina managed and wrote for, and I believe coached as well. So we might have a little chat about that. But since then, or as well, Tina's a GB athlete, Olympic potential, and what exactly happened to that, I'm going to let her introduce. But in the meantime, you may well recognize and know her from her fantastic podcast, Running for Real, which has got a few more downloads than this, but I'm catching up gradually. I've kind of got 3 figures. She's into her 6 or 7 zeros at the end now, but it gives me a target anyway. So without further ado, I shall bring on the lovely Tina Muir. How are you doing?
I am good. And can I just say to everyone watching this, it is 100% my fault. I completely screwed up the times on the first one. I was actually sitting at my I was sitting in my living room. Actually, it wasn't like I was busy doing something. I was like, oh, I've got half an hour to go. And then suddenly dawned on me once I opened up my computer. So I'm sorry about that. And I'm sorry about this morning. I am just apparently not with it, but it's going to be worth it because I know Matt and I are going to have a great conversation. And Matt, thank you so much for having me here.
Is that better now?
I can hear you.
Maybe it was me. Maybe I pressed something down here. It's fine. For the podcast, I can just edit this and no one will know any better. Okay. It's just the people watching who are going to...
I'm so sorry, people watching.
No, don't apologise. Tina, you've apologised enough. Right. Okay, it's fine. Okay. I can splice this out and I'll put your apology in the notes, in inverted commas, and it'll be fine.
You can use it for many other things in the future. I'll be like, oh, Tina sent me this apology for anything and everything you want in the future.
Oh, look, here we go.
You can sell it off to people.
Here we go. Women sticking together on Mother's Day. Look at that. No sound at all from yourself. We could hear your lovely guest.
Oh, so lovely.
Fair enough. Okay, it started. I don't mind it. Yeah, fine.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Kath.
Yeah, cheers, Kath. Yeah, nice to see you. I'm going to just get rid of your comment now. Right, okay, so thank you, Tina. Thanks so much. On Mother's Day as well. I'm sure you've got 101 other things you could be doing now.
Well, actually, it's not Mother's Day in America. So, this is just a normal Sunday for me.
But don't you kind of uphold it as you're from our side originally?
I was, but actually, until this year, I said to my mum, Mum, we have to pick a day because we were kind of doing both. And she said, well, shouldn't it just be the American one? Because if I try and find a Mother's Day card now, there's nothing. So what I'd done in the past was get a happy birthday mum card, cross it out and write happy Mother's Day. So we just decided that my mum's going to have 2 Mother's Day. And but I still sent a message to my mum and a message to my sister. So saying happy Mother's Day. So I'll still kind of say it, but it's not what I'm being celebrated today.
So you managed to get them cards on time. You organised enough to sort that out, were you?
Well, not this year. That's what I mean. As of this year, we're doing it. I'm doing it in May, but I just sent them a text message this morning, so they know I'm at least thinking of them. My mum and sister.
There you go. All right, that's nice. When is it in May? You say?
I don't actually know. I think it's 20 something. I'm not sure.
Right. Well, I'm going to say Happy Mother's Day anyway.
Yes. No, I can still celebrate it. I am British, so
every day is Mother's Day. Anyway, right. So, yes. In all seriousness, thanks very much for joining us. Because I know you're a very busy lady. I'm hoping, because I know about you, and a lot of people I know about you, but I'm hoping the idea of this is to kind of get your name further out there. Now you're an author and all that on Amazon. Yeah. How's all that going?
Yeah, it's going well. Yeah. It's weird for me, that wasn't ever like the primary, like I never expected it to be like an Amazon bestseller or anything. It's way too specific of a topic, but it does feel cool to be able to say an author, and to know that people, you know, trust it, and I've helped people, and, you know, a lot of people have shared about it. So that's been, yeah, I've been happy with it.
So for those of us who don't know what we're talking about with Tina being an author, let's just have a little look at the glorious title itself. Oh, now who's that,
That's
first
not,
of all? What's going on
that's
there?
me
That's
and
you
my daughter
and
Bailey.
Bailey.
Asleep.
There we are. Just, I don't know how that got in there. But yeah, there we go. There's a lovely Bailey. And of course, she's testimony to this whole story and journey, isn't she? Ultimately. There's the book.
That's not the book.
Let's just bring it up. Huh?
Well, what I can see is
that's
the
you. There's that book.
Yeah,
there we are.
A little bit blurry, but
there we go. Right, so maybe give us a breakdown for those who don't know about you, or maybe haven't read the notes of the show. How did you get from wherever you were to writing this book?
Yeah, so well, I guess I am British, but as we've kind of gone over, I live in America. I did well in running in school, and ran for a club, did all that. Got good enough to be offered a full ride scholarship to go to school, or go to university, I should say, in America. Went over to America and did 5 years over here while I got my degree. In America, all degrees are at least 4 years, but most people stretch them out to 5, especially if you're in a sport. That way you can have 5 years of really dedicating yourself. So did my 5 years here, and met my husband and have stayed here since. Went on to become a professional athlete, ran for Saucony, who I think actually, or in England, do people say Saucony? Can't remember.
Yet to work it out. It depends. It's like, what did Nick Anderson say? You had Nick Anderson on the show, didn't you? I think he works with it. What did he say? Let's go by what he said.
I think he says Saucony.
Oh, let's go with Saucony then.
Okay. Yeah, he should know. And yeah, did that, and was all going well. That picture Matt showed a minute ago of me running for Great Britain, that was my lifetime goal since I was 14. And that was the day I accomplished it. As you can tell, I was hating every second of that opportunity. No, I was smiling like so big. People after the race said to me, they were like, "Did you even try hard?" And I was like, yes, I did. But that moment was just, especially coming down the finishing straight, was so overpowering for me. And I didn't care. Like, I was so happy to be doing it. But anyway, did that. And then it was I'm trying to remember the exact timing of it. About 10 months later, I got to meet my niece. I mentioned my sister earlier. She had a daughter, a baby girl. And I'd noticed that I'd also become disenchanted with running. I really wasn't feeling that good about it after achieving that goal. You hear that all the time, don't you? You reach this lifetime goal and then you're kind of like, all right, what now? So it was an amazing moment, but then it kind of left a bit of a low, not a depression, but a bit of feeling lost. I met my niece and something started changing in the way that I was seeing running. I started seeing it as a thing I had to do rather than I get to do. I started seeing it as an rather than a yay, or rather than a let's go do this. And throughout this, the same time, I had become more aware that to be a mother, I had to have my body be working correctly. And I knew I wanted to be a mother. And now seeing this physical manifestation of it in my niece, it kind of reminded me of the fact that I had been keeping a secret for 9 years, which was that I hadn't had a period in 9 years. And I was very aware that you have to have a period to be able to have a child. So all those things kind of led to this moment where I finally snapped. I was in England still. I snapped, I said, I'm done. And I stepped away from the sport and said, I don't know if I'll ever go back. Stopped running, just dead.
So one question then, sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
I can't let you gloss over this. You say you were very aware that you needed to have a period to have a child, but it was 9 years, was it? Uh-huh. So what was your thoughts during those 9 years?
Yeah, I know. Well, it started when I first lost it. The first time I lost it, I was actually still in England. I was training with Paula Radcliffe's coach, and the training sessions were very hard, very difficult. I spoke to the guy. He gave me some suggestions. It worked. Got it back. And then I went to university and it went away again. And so I got very concerned. I said, I know this isn't right. I kind of pressed doctors to help me figure this out. And thankfully in the US, as much as it costs money to get healthcare, when you're in the university system, especially as an athlete, you are very well looked after. I mean, I'm sure you know this, Matt, but many of your listeners know this, that in the UK, if you need an MRI, you might be waiting 3 months. Whereas here, I knew the doctor quite well, and he would be like, I'll get you on Friday. It was like 2 days later, he could get me one. So I decided to be like, look, I know this isn't right. So they did all kinds of tests, actually got me to cycle again using a very strong hormone. But then once I cycled, they said, all right, so nothing's wrong with you. It's just obviously you're running. And so they said, okay, well, whenever you're ready to stop running, it'll come back. And I was like, okay. And then it kind of, the years just kept going by. I kept thinking, I'll deal with it next month, or I probably should go back and get that checked out. But I mean, you know how it is, Matt. We all do it, don't we? We say, oh, I just, I've got that thing next week and I'm really busy right now, but next month I'll have some free time. So I'll do it. I'll deal with it then. But then next month. And before I knew it, it was getting on like 7 years. And then it really I started to like look into what I could change. I changed my diet. I changed the amount of rest I had. I looked at other alternatives, spoke to other doctors, but there really wasn't much out there at that time.
So is it fair to say then that, well, first of all, 2 questions really. When you first approached somebody, a medical professional, did you get the impression that they didn't think it was a big thing? And secondly, did you get the impression that they hadn't seen many other people in your circumstances? Were they generally just misinformed or not interested? Or
I think it was a bit of everything. I saw obviously loads of people over the years. I mean, even just going to the GP or just a general doctor, that's always, as a woman, a question they ask you. What was the date of your last period? And I would always be like, I don't know. And I'd say, they'd be like, well, what do you mean you don't know? And I would explain it to them and they'd say, oh, well, you just need to stop running. And I specifically remember being in England and one of the doctors saying to me, well, you just need to stop running. And I was like, you don't understand, like this university is paying for me to go to university, paying my entire everything. I can't just stop running. But that was her like solution. And so I think it was it was too much effort for them to try and like, oh, just like, if you're not prepared to give up your running, then you can just go, get on with it. Like, it's kind of that whole thing of, you can't say, oh, I'm so exhausted, but then go to bed at 3 a.m. when you have to get up at 5. It was that kind of thing of like, well, if you're not prepared to do what you're supposed to do, then don't come to me. So
and what about coaches you were working with at the time or other athletes? Did you talk to the coaches about it and other athletes around you?
Well, one of the original coaches at the university, who's no longer a coach, was actually the one that told me or told someone else, and I overheard it, to lose weight. And I asked him if I should lose weight, and he said yes, which was essentially what kicked off the whole thing. Right. So he definitely wasn't informed. But I think coaches wise, it's something that, yes, now I think it's getting to the point where you can maybe say something to a coach, but back then it wasn't really something you would ever discuss with a coach. And particularly as a lot of coaches are men, it's not comfortable. And actually, there's a study coming out, a very large study coming out very soon, which I actually know a lot of detail about, 15,000, 14,000 people. And I can't say specific numbers, but let's say over 80% of people hadn't spoken to their coach anything about their period. So
do you think this is because a lot of the coaches are men? Is it a man problem thing where you just think, oh, I'm embarrassed? Or
I think that's partly it. I think it's also women talking about that as a sign of weakness, right. Seeing it as, some women don't want to be kind of like using that as an excuse. Other women just feel very uncomfortable about talking about bodily functions. And other part of it is that it just isn't something that it's very much, even as a woman, it's, with other women, it's something you just don't really discuss. The only time I really felt uncomfortable would be when my friends were discussing like cramps, and I wouldn't know what that was like because I didn't have it. So I'd like slink off to the corner. But really cramps was pretty much the only thing that people discussed. So I think it's just something that women just quietly dealt with under the surface.
So we're kind of talking about, I mean, I teach A&P, so like 4 or 5 times a week I'm in a class of 16-year-olds talking about their menstruation, so it kind of comes quite naturally.
Yeah.
But in society still, it is regarded, like you said, as women will feel pressured by their bosses and their coaches that they can't perform. It's interesting that you say it's seen as like, I mean, we were talking the other day with an adult class how in lots of other cultures it's actually seen as what it should be, as kind of the blessing of life. It's something which is celebrated. It's without that there wouldn't be, well, we shouldn't be around, would we? So it's but it surprises me how coaches who, especially working with so many young female athletes, you think that some of their training would involve recognizing symptoms, making sure they realize or let all their athletes know the door's open.
You just said the key word there, though,
Yeah.
training. I don't think there is, most coaches that I know of, especially in the college system, there isn't a coaching degree or a coaching certification or anything. People have coaching certifications, but from what I see, most coaches in the university system, most coaches, like for the Great Britain athletes, or the, I don't even know if Nick Anderson has any coaching certifications, because it's just something that's not really a requirement. So yeah, you said about learning about it, but again, I think it's just people would rather brush it under the carpet. It's getting better.
Yeah, it is quite bizarre. I mean, obviously in the UK, you've got the UK athletics and you've got the various kind of progression from run leader to running coach. And I've been to those to see what the content was like. And they're excellent actually in terms of teaching coaches to be teachers, to be with all their demonstrations and inclusion and diversification, all these things. But yeah, there was definitely not, maybe in a more, I like to think there should be for people in these positions a whole section, a whole day on injuries and people susceptible to injury. Because also you mentioned the whole female triad thing, aren't you? You're looking at potential stress fractures and telltale signs. But as in your experience, and you've been there at the top, I don't know about like now, but in not many years ago, there was a distinct lack, was there?
Yeah, I would definitely. I mean, I'd still say there is, but it's definitely getting better. There's a lot of people out there who are doing great work. There's an app called Fitter, which I know is doing a lot of FITR. They're doing a lot of really good stuff to kind of bring awareness, and there are plenty of other things and other people talking about it. And just the nutrition side of it, Renee McGregor being a key one. I know she's done a lot on national news lately, so that's good.
Yeah.
But I think, it's crazy if you think about it, like something that happens once a month, every month for half the population. And it's just never really been brought to the attention. And actually the findings that people are having about performance, again, this study, I can't say much more about it yet, but it's really, really interesting to see just how women feel about it, but also how much they feel it affects them.
What about female coaches? There's obviously not enough of them.
No,
it's quite a small percentage. Firstly, it's interesting talking to you because you've been there, but why do you think there's a distinct lack of female coaches? Why are they all kind of, not saying they're bad coaches, but why there's a lack of women?
I think it was originally, I can only really speak to the US right now because I don't really know the UK situation with coaches. All I really know are the Great Britain and England coaches, and those are all men from what I've seen. But I think a lot of it over here in the US is definitely, it's an old boys club. It's getting better. And actually the universities themselves are kind of almost going a bit the other way. Like my husband sometimes has a hard time looking at jobs because they clearly want a woman in the position. So I think it was traditionally a place where it's the same group of men, these just kind of friends that just pass jobs around to each other. But it is interesting that you say that. I think also there's a part I shouldn't really, I don't know if it's I shouldn't say this, but I have to admit for myself, there is a part of me that kind of likes having, I don't know, maybe it's because I've always had male coaches. I always feel like they are better. It's not true at all, but that's always what I've grown up with because I've always had a male coach. So I think there's also that kind of switch we need to, as women, let go of this thing that men know more than us, because it's not true at all. But I can admit as much as anyone else that I've never had a female coach.
It's really interesting you say that, and it's great, and more women should say it. But I think a lot of the women I know, for example, they actually admit they'd prefer having male bosses than female bosses. And I think there's kind of maybe a similarity there. It also is that thing of stick a pack of women together and it can get a little bit competitive and nasty and bitchy. And I don't know whether that's something society creates or whether it's in your genes, who knows? But yeah, it's tricky.
It's getting better, but yeah, there's definitely a culture right now that a lot of women feel you rising up is taking away from me, but there's room for everyone up here. And I've really been trying hard to, bring attention, bring light to other podcasters in the running podcast industry because of that exact reason. That's kind of where I am, where my niche is. But I want to, encourage them, and with everything else, it should be the same with coaches. But again, I think you're right. A lot of women want a male coach, a male boss, and so there's only very few women who actually are prepared to have a woman boss or a woman coach, and then from there they've got to fight it out for who gets those athletes. So it's changing, but yeah, I think partly it's kind of us women trying to fight against that natural instinct to see one another as competitors, because just not true.
Yeah, it's very tricky because you are indoctrinated from day one. The day, as soon as we put girls in pink and boys in blue and send you to school, and most of your teachers kids grow up with that, like you say, you just get used to it. And anyway, I want to go back to something you mentioned where your coach, who is no longer a coach, suggested, because it's interesting. You said he was uninformed, but I'd probably say he was misinformed, and it was a big thing where he presumed that it was you weren't eating enough, because that's the most common. Well,
no, he presumed I was eating too much. I think he told me to lose weight.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. I thought he was presuming that you were missing your periods because of some kind of anorexia.
No, he didn't know
I
was missing that coach was the one that kicked it off, as in he told me to lose weight. So what did I do? Start restricting what I was eating.
Oh, I see what you mean.
What caused the amenorrhea.
Oh, okay. But I can imagine, sorry, I misheard you, because I can imagine that a lot of people, even listeners, presume that the main cause of missing periods is either you're pregnant or anorexia, because that's what kind of hits the media. But that wasn't the case for you at all, was it?
Yes and no. It wasn't anorexia. I wasn't pregnant. But I did have disordered eating. I've realized this more and more lately, that my relationship with food was not good. From pretty much that coach saying that kind of kicked it off in my mind. But you're exactly right, and that is why I didn't say anything. You mentioned, why did I let it go 9 years? I didn't say anything because I didn't want people to say you're anorexic, which is not true. It's, and it also kind of puts people who are struggling or working through anorexia in this box of like shame. And that's just, they're working very hard, most of them, to get out of this. And but I was scared I would be given that label, and because it has such a negative connotation attached to it. You're right, but it is a lot of this amenorrhea, not having a period, is all about calories. You're not getting enough in. But the thing is, it's not just about women in this situation, Matt. Like, men are the same thing. It's called RED-S now, relative energy deficiency syndrome, and men are not exempt. So any of us as runners or not as runners who aren't getting enough calories, we're putting our bodies at serious risk. But women just have that more visible kind of indicator of the period each month to know whether it's enough or not. So
what were some of the symptoms? Because I got picked up on this, actually. It's from America. Maybe it's the RED-S thing is kind of bigger in America. But yeah, what would the symptoms for a guy be with the overtraining and not eating properly?
Yeah, like serious fatigue, kind of chronic fatigue, low testosterone, stomach upsets, which Renee McGregor talked about lately. Like if you're constantly having like GI issues, that's another huge warning sign. Constant hunger. The fact that if you're thinking about food all the time, that's what I was kind of doing. I'd be like, I just ate. How can I be hungry again? And so I'd be thinking about food all the time. I'd finish a meal and be like, oh, I can't wait for my next one. But that was because I hadn't eaten enough at that one. And so if you're constantly thinking about food, that's another big one. Kind of seeing events socially as a scary thing to do because you don't want to gain weight. That's another one. And I just want to take this moment to say it's not about weight. Like people look at it and they think, oh, well, that's exactly what I thought. I'm not skinny enough to be that. Like there's skinnier people than me, but it's nothing about weight. It's all about kind of calories for you and your body. And I've realized since that I need to eat a lot more calories than someone else I might race against, even if we were doing exactly the same training. My body just needs more. And, that's just how it's going to be. So, yeah, I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it is tricky because you do look at so many athletes and there's practically nothing on them. And does that kind of mean that they're all not eating and overtraining, or does it mean that they're just naturally, that's their body shape and that's the advantage to be? Or
I wouldn't say it's an advantage anyway. I think we're all going to be our strongest at our own like healthy weight. Like for me, I'm probably only 8 to 10 pounds, maybe, what that being kilos, 5 kilos, maybe 4. Heavier than what I was before, but that in itself is where my body is happy. Like I have my period regularly now, and that's where my body wants to be. So looking back, if I'd have been this weight or this kind of calorie consumption running years ago, I probably would have run faster. So it's all about finding the balance for you. It's hard not to see it as, oh, they're just lucky, they're skinnier and they can get away with it. But that isn't the case. You're going to run your best. You're going to be your best when you are at the weight and the calorie intake that is best for you. So there's a lot of very naturally thin runners out there who get their period very regularly, very healthy, eat enough. You wouldn't believe how much they eat. And then there's some people that are very thin, they're same genetics, but they might not eat as much, but they can, their body is okay with that. Maybe it's very efficient. So it's very confusing to kind of know where you fall. But I think the biggest thing is, for me, it's getting to a point where you're okay with eating, you're at peace with eating whatever you want and whenever you want. And that will kind of be where your body wants to be. You're not ravenous all the time, but you're not thinking about food all the time. So that's kind of where I would strive to get to.
That's good. So to make it clear for runners, especially younger runners who don't know what to expect, because there's this kind of illusion that if you're going to be successful, you're going to have to work that hard. So a knock-on effect is going to be things like missing periods or irregular menstruation. As far as I've looked into it and from listening to you and the podcast you've done, even just missing 1 or 2 is a sign that something's going wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is kind of a warning sign that you're riding that line. And it kind of gives you that time to be like, I better get this back on track. And, when I was getting mine back, the first time I got it back, I was still breastfeeding, which inhibits your menstrual cycle for some women. But I was still breastfeeding when I got it. But then I went 42 days before the next one. So you better bet from day 30 to day 42, I was like eating so much thinking, this is happening again. Like I better get going again. So if you miss 1 or even 2 or whatever, that's get back on track with your eating, start there. That's always the best place to be. I did stop running, as I mentioned, to get mine back. And that just kind of kick-started it and made it happen quickly. I was pregnant within 10 weeks, but you don't necessarily have to cut out the running if you try with eating more first.
Yeah, that was interesting. I mean, for those people who are interested, I'm definitely going to write it in the notes and that, but there's a amazing discussion between you and the 2 ladies. Let me just remember their names.
Heidi and Nicola, that
was it, which is something which I think it's just should go down as one of the all-time classic podcasts, I think.
Well, actually, that is my most downloaded episode ever.
Oh, that's brilliant. So I'll put a note up for that because it goes into the whys and the hows and comes up with some brilliant information. But I noticed in that there's an interesting discussion about the question of whether you do absolutely stop running or whether you try. I can't remember what the phrase you used. It was like all out or something, or
All
total.
in is, yeah, where you
Is
just
that it? Yeah.
do all of it, like stop running, eat everything and anything whenever you want. Don't really do much movement other than sitting on the couch exercise. Get acupuncture, like relax, rest, go to bed, get 10 hours, all that stuff. That's what, we call it all in.
But it doesn't, I suppose it depends on the person, whether that is that, I mean, obviously the psychology of it is important as well. It's a massive factor. Are you the sort of person who can do that, or are you the sort of person who can dial down? You went all in, didn't you? You were like, I can't trust myself.
Yeah, so I would say the majority of women that reach out to me, and there's been tens of thousands at this point, the majority of them, it's way too scary for them to just all of a sudden go all in, do it all, stop running, everything. And that, I think a lot of people get there when they kind of realize that the other way either takes too long or, isn't working. But most people aren't prepared to just make a snap decision like I did. You're right. The psychological side is the hardest part of it, because, it's not only are you taking away the identity part of not being a runner or not being able to exercise. You always saw yourself as someone who got out 5 days a week or 7 days a week to do some exercise. Now you don't have that. But you're also kind of going like a salmon swimming upstream. I mean, we listen to the ads on the radio, or even hearing people's conversations. What are they saying? I need to lose weight. I ate too much. Or, I was a pig over Christmas. Like, it's constant conversation about losing weight. So you trying to gain weight feels like it's just really hard to do. So I would say the psychological part is very difficult, and something that a lot of people struggle with more than they thought they would. Because it sounds fun, doesn't it? You've got like a free pass to eat whatever you want, whenever you want. It sounds amazing. And I kind of very much embrace that. And actually, interestingly enough, reached a point where I was like, okay, I'm kind of done with that now. And I dialed it down. But what was that the point? That was the point when everything had clicked together. But people get very scared that they won't be able to stop, and they envision themselves, going suddenly to obese and being, you can't even walk to the post box up the road because you're too tired to go anywhere. So it's quite scary psychologically.
Definitely, yeah. And this is both for elites and recreational, I suppose, because elites, you're thinking, this is my future, this is my bread and butter. For a lot of recreational runners, running is their identity. You take that away, and they're no longer they just don't feel
it's
like
their thing,
anymore.
yeah. Like they're a parent, they work for a living, and running is their one thing that's for them. So yeah, it's scary, and it's definitely something that's tricky. And myself, when I did this, I was launching my business called Running for Real, and I had all these fears saying, well, why is anyone going to listen to me when I'm not running? I'm not, they're going to think I'm an imposter. So there's a lot of like scary stuff that goes along with it.
But that worked out much better than you probably imagined.
Well, I saw some of my, I don't know if they're still in here now, but some of my superstars, as I call them, are in here right now. And they were very supportive of me, kind of saying, we don't care whether you're running or not. Like we want to hear from you either way. So I want to give them a thank you for sticking with me and showing me that I didn't have to be a runner to help them with their running. So
I think that's without making your head explode too much, that's the fantastic thing about Running for Real. I mean, the name conquers it completely. It is real, but it's not just running for real. It's real as in being a person. It's real as in, although we all love running, there is a life that fits around runners as well. And sometimes it's going to kind of dip in and decrease and stuff. So, I mean, no, it's a great podcast, and it fills a gap that often I've kind of looked for. And one of the reasons I tried to start, or this podcast really, was just to make a podcast that's accessible, not just for runners, but also therapists and coaches, which will cross boundaries between men and women, which I think your podcast definitely does. I think there's a temptation if guys think, oh no, it's another woman talking to other women about. No, this is exactly, it's the same as when I'm sure, maybe it was just me, but I'm sure teenage boys, there's a stage where you pick up Cosmopolitan because you're kind of interested, and you flick through
I didn't know that.
If this is just me, then I'm sorry guys, but you kind of you pick up and you look through these magazines, or even earlier, maybe you look through Blue Jeans or some kind of teenage girly magazine, as in that type of girly magazine, not the other one. But because you're interested, guys at a younger age, they're interested in what are all these girls about then? And it's the same thing now. Male adults should be looking specifically at conversations between women, tuning into podcasts like yours, particularly when it's two female guests. I love the ones you do where it's just you and a mate, like Sarah Crouch or someone just chatting.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, if you
Like
really
you're
want to find
overhearing,
out,
yeah.
it's amazing. It's just great.
Yeah, well, this
So,
is kind of like that. Although, can I ask you, when you flick through, Cosmo, what were your thoughts?
It's a long time ago.
I know, but like, were you like, wow, this is all about makeup, or like, well, I mean, obviously, you're probably like, oh, that girl's, look at how pretty she is, or whatever word you would have used. But like, can you remember any? Were you like, wow, this is all a bit like, about the way they look, or was there anything? I'm just curious. Was there anything that jumped out?
I think the main thing which kind of stuck with me, and it always has stuck with me, is just like, wow, these people really talk to each other a lot, and they'll talk about anything and everything.
Like girls.
Whereas, like everything, girls, women
yeah.
in particular. I mean, sometimes men will complain that women talk too much, and hand on heart, I believe you actually do. But in talking loads, you share feelings, you share worries, you share concerns. I was talking last week to Lisa Shabbos, who's another great inspirational woman from our neck of the woods. And there's this problem now with anxiety, particularly in men, and suicide and all this stuff. And I think it's got to be connected to the fact that guys don't talk. They're scared. I'm sure women have stresses and problems as well, but at least you actually talk to each other.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a lot.
Whereas men close it up and they're worried, just the same as women are probably scared of going to a guy and talking about their periods and stuff because they think there's going to be preconceptions. Guys don't talk to each other really about worrying about feelings of imposter syndrome or stuff like that because it's seen as a weakness. So running for real, guys. Listen to it. Dart towards the conversations with just women, and you'll learn a lot.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, cool. It's fun, and I try to be very varied with the type of guests I bring on. So hopefully it keeps it so that everyone can enjoy some episodes.
Oh no, it shows that you have some amazing guests. And then there's also for the guys as well, that next second you're talking to Rich Willie and Alex Hutchinson and people like this who are just like bam, as much information as you could possibly want.
Oh yeah.
Which is great. So let's I can't believe it's already 2:15 now, but I want to imagine that either maybe a young runner is listening, a female runner is listening to this podcast, or maybe the father or the mother of a young athlete is listening to this podcast and they think, I think my daughter's suffering from this. Is a conversation we had. What is now, I know it's tricky because you're in the States, but what is the support, or where should they go? I'm worried that if they go to GP, it's going to get shot down a little bit. Is there maybe a online or
yes?
Even, what should they do?
I believe trainbrave.org. It just is what it sounds like. Trainbrave.org. That's Renee McGregor and Tom Fairborough, I think his name is. That's what they've set up pretty much for this reason. Resources for working through, under eating, getting your period back, that kind of stuff. That is the number one place I would recommend sending you to. I mentioned the app Fitter, FITR. That's another great app that has a lot of information for women. They are starting to look into amenorrhea. Obviously you can follow me and you read my book. I would love to help you. And my book is, going to be helpful, although I will say, for someone who is maybe a teenage girl, some of the parts might not resonate quite as much because it's pretty clear that I was ready to have a child, and I would imagine most people in their teenage years are not ready to have children. But the same is, a lot of it is about the body image and learning to love yourself kind of stuff, which everyone can read. And I would just say, go follow people who inspire you and make you feel good about yourself. I mean, it's very easy for us on social media to go follow people who we think are cool, or like celebrities, and think, oh, I wish I was like them. But don't follow them. Don't find yourself, if someone makes you feel bad about yourself when you look at their pictures, unfollow them. Or if you can't unfollow them, if they're a friend, mute them so you can't see it, and go follow people who inspire you. I mean, one for me is Amy Schumer, the comedian. I just love how real she is. She's in this celebrity world surrounded by these women who are just so materialistic, but she just keeps herself, and she's just funny and, stands up for what she believes in. So people like that for me are inspiring. Candace Huffin is another one over here. that I like. So go follow someone who inspires you and makes you feel good about who you are, not making you feel bad, because that's a huge part of it is believing in yourself.
Brilliant, definitely. And as you mentioned, and I probably haven't bigged up enough, I mean, that's your book as well. Like you say, there might be bits that don't resonate for a young teenage athlete, but we're talking about maybe coaches picking it up. We're talking about parents picking it up, brothers, sisters, anyone who's worried and just wants to know. Because if you've got a friend or family member or even mum who's kind of like heavily into their running, you know, it's something which could become an issue, isn't it? At the moment as we stand. You know, especially if they're really dedicated and just doing everything they can to excel. So yeah, definitely your book, which is available on, well, definitely on Amazon.co.uk. I'm sure on Amazon.com. Did you say it's a bestseller already? Did I hear you say?
No. It's it was the one a number one new release in the running running category. It's not a best. Well, I guess that was, but it's not a bestseller now.
Bestseller. It does make it a bestseller. That's brilliant. Fantastic. And right, let me just check on my little crib sheet.
I just want to say, while you're looking at that, David said, I've never thought of the Running for Real podcast as a women's podcast, just an amazing podcast, which happens to be hosted by women. So I don't know if we kind of confused people thinking that it is, you know, we're talking about women's stuff. It's not really, David is exactly right that it is, I've got just as many male listeners as female listeners, and we don't talk about girly stuff. It's very much an everything podcast.
No, I wasn't suggesting it's a women's podcast whatsoever. No. I'm doing the opposite. I'm saying that if men do have the impression that it could be that, or by listening to one and just hearing two female voices talking, and a lot of guys are just pre-engineered, so as soon as they hear two women talking, they just switch off. Unfortunately, they think it's going to be like, what's it called, that show on TV? What they're called? Loose Women or something. because we get that shoved down our heads 24 hours a day by our beloved media.
No, it's not like that.
Guys disconnect. And I assure you out there is absolutely no similarity at all. No, it's the opposite. Guys should be listening to it, because as well as picking up great things about running, they've just learned so much about women as well. That was the point I was making, in a good sense. So David, sorry if I confused you there. It's definitely not a podcast for women. So we'll clear that comment off now. Fine. Let's have a little look. So Bailey came along, the lovely Bailey. How old is she now?
She's 14 months.
So imagine down the line, Bailey wants to start running.
She already likes to run around the house. So
is she showing that aptitude, do you think?
I do not want to be one of those parents. Like, I swear my parents now, like, you know, they'll be like, oh yeah, you were always running around as a child. And I'm like, please, every child is running around as a child. Like, you know, if I picked up a musical instrument as a child, which Bailey has multiple times, I wouldn't be like, oh, she's going to be a musician. So I don't want to be one of those parents that kind of pushes it onto her. But, you know, I'd love to think that she would. Steve and I are both very much lead by example kind of people. And so I would be surprised if she wasn't kind of wanting to kind of join in. And, you know, when I was down in Disney World doing the Disney World half marathon, I saw there was a 1 mile race, and I said to my dad, like, one day she's going to do that. Like, I'm, you know, even if that's kind of a bribe for going into the parks, like, you know, I would hope she would want to do it as herself. But if I have to force her to do one race, it will probably be that one. But yeah, it's hopefully going to be something she enjoys. But if she doesn't, I'm absolutely fine with that not being the case. I've seen so many examples of girls and boys being pushed into a sport or pushed to kind of perform in a sport. And the people from my community who are watching this right now or listening to this right now, they know that is one of my real, like, pet peeves, is when people kind of tell me that this child's going to be an Olympian because at age 12 they're running the certain time. So I want Bailey to decide she wants to do it, and I'm not going to put any pressure on her, even if she does turn out to be good, until she's at least like 18, 19 years old.
That's brilliant. From you, that sounds amazing. And it is a problem as well, because as a sports therapist and that, a lot of the kids I see, sometimes you just need to say, like, you just want the parents to leave the room for a second, because you can see that's because they love them and they want them to do well, etc., but there's a pressure there. A number of times I have managed to get the kid by themselves, and just they've kind of like just gone, I don't want to do it anymore, you know,
Mm.
or they've gone, you know, why did you stay on the pitch if your foot was hurting? Because it was just, I knew my dad was watching and stuff. I didn't want to let him down. It's just like kind of 10, 11-year-old kids. So yeah, it's a big message there for dads and mums as well. It's very tricky though. God,
And I'm not in it yet, so I don't know how I will handle it. But that's something that I've always felt very strongly about, and maybe even a little bit aggressive. I think my community would also agree. I can be a bit aggressive in my response there, because that's something I'm so passionate about, that kids should play, and that's it. So
when was Disney again? Because you won that,
January.
Didn't you?
Yeah,
and you won that. Hey.
Yeah, that was. I will say it was a slow year for them, but it was still. I still ran fast, and so that was an amazing experience. Probably number 2 in my running career.
Oh wow, that's how significant was that in terms of like a comeback, or because there was a period where you just didn't want to run, you weren't running.
Yeah,
you can imagine.
I mean, I was still 6 minutes off my personal best in the half marathon, which, can I just, before anyone kind of starts rolling their eyes, if you 6 minutes might not sound like a lot if you've run 2 hours, 2:30 in the marathon, but 6 minutes as, a percentage of just over an hour, that's actually a lot of time. So I think you're talking, 30 seconds a mile, which for someone who's only, I think my personal best pace is like 5:30 something in the mile, and I was running over 6, so that's a pretty high percentage change. So I'm nowhere near. Even now I'm going into Boston Marathon, and I'm probably 15 minutes away from a personal best, but I'm totally at peace with where I am. I put my daughter first. The other day I had an hour run on my sheet. It was raining. She didn't want to be under the rain cover, and I said, okay, so I cut it at like 48 minutes, I think, or something like that. Whereas before I would have been like, I'm going to finish this, or I'm going to go out for 12 minutes later, or whatever it would be. So I'm very much at peace with kind of where my running is. And David, as well as many of the others, know they train the same way that I talk about no watch me. So I don't do anything by paces. My training has been entirely by minutes, nothing by distance or time. Distance or pace. So it's quite enjoyable this way, which is good.
That's great. That's lovely to hear. It just reminded me, actually, there was a amazing quote by Nicole on your podcast, on that one I mentioned, which was when I'm building a 5-star baby hotel.
Yes,
I'm prepared
that's
to
my favorite quote too.
Oh geez, I mean, there was moments on that podcast where you kind of, I had a little bit of dust in my eye anyway. I think you guys had to stop it and restart it or something, but just even from the happiness side of it, of hearing things like that, it was just like, wow, this is so
it just changes really your perspective. People would say, oh, I'm getting fat, but you say, no, I'm building a 5-star baby hotel. Or for me, I would say I'm building a nice soft pillow for my baby to sleep on. Like, I would want them to sleep on a plush, soft, really pillowy like bed, not like one of those wiry like things you might stay on at a friend at universities, where it's like a futon, they call it here. I don't know what the word is.
Over here as well.
Yeah. Like, so there's definitely ways you can kind of spin the perspective to make it not seem so scary.
Definitely brilliant. Right, well, look, it's 2:28. I mean, it zoomed by. I could talk to you for another hour, but it's Mother's Day. I've got more responsibilities as well, obviously, over here.
Oh, yeah.
But thank you so much, Tina, for coming on and giving us an hour of your time.
Thanks for having me.
No, it's wicked. I'm hoping that, especially when I put the podcast out, there'll be lots of people inspired by you and will buy your book, maybe reach out and contact you. Your website is quite simple, isn't it?
It's TinaMuir.com.
Yeah. What it is.
So TINAMUIR.com.
How do you pronounce your surname?
I actually say it Muir, but people say it all kinds of ways. So
there's not one way. Muir. I kind of do a Muir, but Tina Muir.
A lot of people do that, so that's fine.
So TinaMuir.com for any information, and hopefully there will be, people who are I don't want anyone to be in a bad situation, but if there is people out there looking for support, then hopefully today, and thanks to you, they'll realise that there is places they can go to and talk about these things. So thank you very much.
I appreciate it. It was great fun.
Great. So I'm going to make you disappear now, just say goodbye to everyone else, and then I'll come back and say thanks to you personally in a couple of minutes.
Okay, that's all right. Thank you.
All right, cheers. Speak to you in a bit.
Thanks. Bye.
What a lovely lady. Isn't that amazing? Oh, I feel all warm inside. Something in my eye, bit of dust. It's brilliant. Like I say, the Running for Real podcast for so many reasons, but definitely look at the one with Nicole Rinaldi and Heidi Greenwood. It's got so much important information. Like I say, whether you're a female athlete or your daughter or your sister or your mum or your aunt, or it's something you should check out. And then also, again, moving away from that, just because of the quality of the guests and because Tina is the host, she just puts it in a way that is so real, like the name suggests. You've got Rich Willie, you've got Hutchinson, you've got some fantastic guests on there. The list is endless. Steve Magnus, you've got on there. So yeah, check it out. And then once you've checked it out, please don't forget about me, because I'll be here every Sunday, twice a month as well, to try and keep it real. In fact, in 2 weeks' time, we've got the fantastic Jack Chew. We're putting a bit of testosterone back into it. We don't want to go too far down the sensitivity route. I've already admitted I used to read Cosmopolitan. So Jack Chew will be back. None come with more testosterone than our mank lover, Jack Chew. So do tune in 2 weeks' time, where Jack will be talking about the state of physiotherapy and what he's doing to make it better in the UK. And fantastic news and information he'll be giving. Until then, thank you very much for listening as always. My thanks again to guest Tina Muir. Have a look at our website, RunChatLive.com, and we'll see you back here in 2 weeks' time. Thank you very much, and goodbye. You're listening to RunChat Live podcast, putting the evidence back into running injury and performance.